you're going through a separation. What can you do when you're going through a separation? You got all this stuff coming up, right? I mean, you got the anxiety, sometimes anger too, like blame, maybe blame and judgment, going back and forth from feeling guilty, feeling shame because you're realizing some things that you didn't realize before when you were together. You're starting to see things maybe from your partner's perspective a little bit better. Starting to see some of the things that maybe you weren't doing that you could have been doing, that may have been part of the contributing factor to the separation, and maybe that's a challenge for you. I know what that's like because, like I said, I've been there. Or maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're just blaming the other person. Either way, it's okay. So what do we do? What do we do from this place? Maybe you're going through thoughts of, wishing that you would have done something different. Maybe you're going through thoughts of, oh, what if I say this? Is that going to be the wrong thing? What if I do this? How is my partner going to take that? Is that going to be something that they're going to take as a reason that they don't want to separate, or they don't want to get back together with me? What can I do? And that's why we're here. So I know what the thoughts are like. I've had the story, when my wife separated, I was like, is she with somebody else? Worried about whether or not she was with somebody else, trying to figure out what I could do. What do I do to reconcile my marriage? And then every time you try to communicate, tell me if you're going through this. Every time you try to communicate, you're so overwhelmed with emotion. Does your communicate end up in being either arguments, something hurtful being said from you, your partner, or both, or it comes down to a place of like pleading, like, please don't do this, please don't do this. Trying to figure out that communication piece. Is that a challenge for you? And the emotions that are coming up. Are the emotions that you have coming up a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of stress? What am I going to do? How can I do this? Thoughts of the storyline of sometimes even revenge. Why would you do this to me? Why would you do this to me? Trying to figure out what's your part and what's their part. Like, what did I do that led to this? What did they do that led to this? And what can I do different? So that's kind of maybe where you're at. If that's where you are, just put a little comment put a little something down in the comments if that is relative to where you're at and what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're going through, what communication is like. So a lot of things, the questions that I had when I was going through that is, what can I do to reconcile? What do I need to do to reconcile with my wife? What do I need to do to help her to see that I can be different, that things can be different for us? So we're going to talk about that right now. So here's some of the things that are necessary, that I've found necessary for myself to reconcile and to really get back to that place of reconciliation whenever I've seen this with myself and with other couples, married people. What does it take to reconcile? Not all marriages are reconcilable because one person is not willing to, they've already made up their mind that this is not going to work. But that I've seen is in some of the separations that go on, but really in very few. Really in very few. But to be able to reconcile, we really need 5 things. First, we have to be willing to, the number one thing is we got to be willing to change. And usually at this place of experience in marriage, we are ready to change. I was ready to do everything different because I realized I screwed up a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. I wasn't there for my wife the way she needed me to be. I didn't communicate with my wife the way that she needed me to. I wasn't showing up. I was just running away. And I realized that whenever she left. I was willing to change. And what do we need to change? There's some really specific areas and things we need to change. Number one is we got to change our mindset. We got to figure out, we got to open our minds to I can be different, things can change. And when it comes up with a mindset, we get the opportunity to be open and ready to challenge our old ideas. Maybe we had an old idea that, well, my wife or my husband is just fill in the blank. We got to be willing to change that mindset and see things in a different way, to change our perception, to see things in a different way. If we want to be able to reconcile our marriage. If you want to be able to reconcile your marriage, you got to change your mindset. That's number one. There's like 5 different things that we got to work on, and this is what I help people with. But I want to give you the information because you can look into these things and change these things. It takes time. But number 2 is we got to have a vision of what it is that we want our marriage to look like. That's really important. We have to have a clear idea of what you want your marriage to look like so you can start to put that effort in to create that, even when your partner is not willing. And that's what makes it hard for a lot of people, because they feel like, well, I can't do anything if my partner isn't willing. But the truth of the matter is things can change. If we change, things can change. Not always. Sometimes the partner's made up their mind and they're not going to change their mind no matter what. But we have to be willing. I had to be willing to do a lot of things. I had to be able to. I spent a lot of money to save my marriage and to get back with my wife. I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of energy. I took a lot of responsibility for a lot of things in my marriage that I wasn't willing to do before we got separated. You know, I took responsibility for so much. And that's okay. Sometimes we have to take responsibility for everything. Just like whenever we have a partner that's sick, we have a partner that can't show up physically because they're sick. We have in a marriage like that, we have to take responsibility for everything. Sometimes when our partner can't see the vision for our marriage, we have to create that vision, and we have to have a clear vision of what it could look like. And we have to put the energy towards that. And we got to be willing to risk everything. That probably doesn't sound so appealing when you don't know what the outcome's going to be. But we have to be willing to risk everything if we want to really reconcile. We have to be willing to put our marriage first before everything else. Before our money, before our time, before our job, before everything, and not know whether it's going to work out or not. If you're not willing to do that, then guess what? If you're not willing to risk everything, then you're not at the place where you're ready to reconcile. Because we got to be willing to risk it all. I had to be willing to risk everything to get back with my wife. So there's mindset. There's a vision, having a vision. We also we got to figure out the skill sets that we need to get better at. If you're not really good at communicating, if you're not really good at planning, if you're not that good at empathy, if you're not that good at being gentle and kind and understanding, those are those skill sets that need to be developed to be able to learn how to connect with your partner in a way that they'll feel safe enough to open up again. Because the partner left because they couldn't see the way to get their needs met in the marriage, so they left. They couldn't see a way through. So you have to have the vision. We have to do a lot to be able to reconcile. It's a lot of work. It's not an easy process. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not an overnight process, because even if you do reconcile, there's going to be a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. This is not an easy thing. I've been there. I know it's not easy. This is not easy. There's a lot of things you got to do, and that's okay. You got a skill set, gentleness, forgiveness, and emotional regulation. Because if we can't regulate our emotions, we're never going to be able to communicate. Because as long as your feelings are ruling your life and your communication and your responses and your reactions, you're going to continue to go to that anger. You're going to continue to go to that shame and guilt, and you're going to continue to go to that place that you're not going to be able to have a clear vision of how to get through it. So emotional regulation is really important. Learning how to regulate emotion. And in this space, it's really a big challenge because you got a lot of emotions that are flooding in all the time. Everything is you're more sensitive in this state, I know. So skill set, another big thing that you're going to need. The fourth thing you're going to need, and these aren't in order of importance, they're just things that you need. Another thing you need is you got to have a strategy. You have to have a strategy. You got to have a wise plan. You got to figure out what is the right action, what is the good action, what is the action that's going to get me the results that I want. So a lot of times we can spend a lot of time on a strategy that doesn't work. Like I'll just beg and plead with my partner until they want to be with me, and that doesn't work. People don't want to be with somebody who's begging and pleading. They don't. That is like a needy action, but that's a lot of times what we're drawn to do. Our emotions draw us to want to, please don't go, I'll change, I'll do something different, I'll be a different person, I promise I'll do it, I'll never do the same thing again. But that's not attractive to our partner, so it's like figuring out the right strategy to really build our skill set, change our mindset, create a vision for where we want to go, regardless of if the other person's there or not. Because we have to create a vision of where we want to go and where we want our marriage to be. Because maybe that's part of what your partner, that's a challenge for them, that we weren't able to create a vision. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes the person will leave because they want the partner to have more vision and they don't. So it's something you can cultivate. And that's something that I work with people to help them do. And the other thing is, all these things are going to start to create energy. Once you get a vision, once you start to open your mindset up to different ideas, different ways of being, once you start to practice and learn new skill sets and get strong in your skill sets area, and you start to get a wise plan, a strategy for what you want, that's going to create energy. And also the other thing here is self-care. Self-care is another thing that's in with a skill set, is something that's really important, because self-care produces the energy that it's going to take to be able to have the energy to reconcile, because your partner is probably not going to be putting in a whole lot of energy because they don't believe in it. They may even be in some ways undermining it because they've made up their mind that it's not going to work. So a lot of things they're going to be doing some things to undermine it, because part of them doesn't want to try again because it's a lot of work. Marriage is a lot of work. And when you reconcile, that's not the end of the work. It's continuous work. It's not over once you reconcile. That is the beginning. It takes a lot of work to get to that place, but if it took you 5 to 10 years to get where you're at, it's going to take you at least 2 to 3 years to get to a place of working, to get to a place probably to where your partner is 100% on board. It takes a lot of work. So the energy is necessary, though. We got to figure out a way, when you're going through separation, how do we raise our energy, get our energy level up? We got to be able to create this vision and this purpose and this reason of why we want this to happen, to create the energy to be able to do all these things. So I hope this is making sense. Are you getting something out of this? I hope you're getting a lot out of this, because these are the things that it takes. And that's what I work with people to help them do, because this stuff is not easy to do on your own. It's easy to have strategies where you just do the same thing over and over, and that's human nature, right? If it doesn't work, I'll just do it louder, I'll do it longer, I'll do it faster and harder, and maybe it'll work. If what I'm saying doesn't work, I'll get louder. If what I'm doing doesn't work, I'll just do it more. I'll just do it more aggressively, right? And maybe that's not all men, but sometimes men, we can be like that. We're just like, to us, we got a hammer and everything's the nail, right? We're just trying to make it like, come on, this will work. I'll just keep hitting it, right? If the engine doesn't work in the car, you just bang it with a hammer a couple ways and then maybe it'll work. But that doesn't work. We got to change our strategy, because if the strategy that you're using is not working, you got to switch gears. Okay? If you're trying to go up the hill and you're in fifth gear, you're going to be stalling out. You got to switch gears. You got to get in a different gear and figure out, okay, what strategy is going to work to get me the results that I want. And this is a little different than other goals because it involves another person, and another person has to be willing. So one of the things that's necessary to reconcile a marriage and to really get back in the good graces of a partner that's probably pretty well done, obviously, because they left, we got to really understand their perspective. And to do that, we really have to get to a place where our emotions we're able to regulate our own emotions and get outside of ourselves a little bit. And that's a real big challenge. And it's something that I see is really helpful to have support on. And that's what I do. But we got to understand our partner's perspective. You've got to understand, why did they leave? What are the reasons that they left? What was happening, the reasons that they left? What was the reason? How did they see things? And I'm not saying that it's definitely, in all relationships, it takes two to tango, and everybody has a part. But if you're going through a separation, it's likely that you're really looking at your part and you're willing to take a lot of responsibility right now. And I think that's a great thing, because that's the way that we can make a lot of changes, and we can make changes to be able to reconcile. We have to take a lot of the responsibility. We got to take 190% of the responsibility, because when our partner has walked away, it's basically them saying, I'm done taking responsibility for this thing and having a vision for it and doing all this stuff. So it makes it a lot harder. I hope this is making sense. Somebody said, energy come with self-love and self-concept. Yeah, having high energy, being able to come to it with some self-love, some confidence, some real understanding of ourselves and what we want. But this is not an easy task. And I am not saying, believe me, I'm not saying it's an easy task, because I know it's not easy. This is not easy. It's really hard. It's a really hard thing to do. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to blow smoke. I'm going to tell you how it really is. You know? And some people are not going to be ready for this, and that's okay. I understand that. But if we really want our marriage to work and we want to reconcile, these are the things that it takes. I'm going to be real honest with you. You know, we have to be able to understand our partner's perspective. And have to is not really a language pattern that I go along with, but we get to understand our partner's perspective, because when we see life the way that they see life a little bit clearer, we can start to see where we're all living our lives in a way that isn't the most helpful for our partner all the time. And that's okay. But for us to be able to see things through our partner's eyes will help us to be more compassionate and empathetic. That doesn't mean be a doormat either. But we can see our relationship, our marriage, through their eyes a little bit, so we can start to be more sensitive to their perception. That doesn't mean they're right or they're wrong. It's not about right and wrong, because how we perceive the world is our truth. That's their truth. So if we can understand their truth, we can start to adjust the way that we communicate with them in a way that can be more inviting. That doesn't mean we just bow down and let them rule everything and have all the say in everything. That's not what this is about. I like the word self-concept, because the way through is to know what it is, that have that vision for what we want, and be willing to do all these things to create it. And everything else goes to the side, and you're willing to put everything into creating this marriage that you want. to show them that you're willing to go all in. You're willing to sacrifice everything for the marriage, even when they're not willing. That's what I did. That's what I had to do to get back with my wife. That's what I had to do. I was willing to sacrifice everything. That's a lot. And I don't expect everybody here to be willing to do that. But I believed in it. I had faith in it, and I was willing to sacrifice everything. And it's still a challenging road. It's not easy. Marriage is not easy. We think we're going to get our partner back and it's going to be happily ever after, but it's work. There's a lot of work. So we're asking for a lot of work, and that's okay. Somebody says, I don't know if it hasn't been some of the hardest work I've ever done. Is that right? Am I reading that right? It hasn't been, or is it it has been? I'm not sure. But for me, it was hard. It was hard work. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you have a different story than I do, but that's what I found. It was hard. Hard work for me. And that's okay. I don't think marriage is supposed to be easy. We get the Disney movies and stuff, and all the stuff we grew up with as childhood tells us that marriage is going to be a place where we're going to go and we're going to get our needs met and everything's going to be great, and we're going to have this person who fulfills our life and makes us happy and happily ever after. But from that premise, from that idea that marriage is supposed to fulfill us, we go into marriage thinking that it's going to give us something. But when we take our vows, we talk about we're the ones who are there for that other person to have and to hold and to be with forever. It's not about what we're getting, it's about what we're giving, but we've been trained to look at marriage like something we're going to get. And it's easy to fall into that mindset. And one of the things that I see as a challenge with marriage is the premise. We go in with the idea of, what am I going to get? Yeah, I'm getting all this stuff. And I'm not proud to say that, but when I got married, that's what I was thinking about. This is going to be great. My wife's going to do all these things for me. Yay. But then realizing that that's a false premise. That's a false idea of what it actually is. It's an opportunity to serve. So I hope some of this has been helpful. I want to go back over some of the things that I've shared. And this goes for people who are feeling like they're close to separation, or they're feeling like this goes for all of us. What do we have to change to have a better marriage, a strong marriage, a fortified marriage? This is the same thing for those people as well. We gotta strengthen our skill sets. We gotta learn how to communicate better, be more empathetic, be more understanding, be more forgiving. We have to learn how to set boundaries. We don't have to, we get to. We have the opportunity to learn how to set healthier boundaries and to be able to tell the truth, to be honest. That's a skill set. To be able to say what we really mean and mean what we really say. And not say, okay, I'll do that, and hope that our partner knows that we don't really want to do that. Because that's a tough thing, because we do that in marriage. That's something that we do. We say yes when we mean no. And that makes it really hard for our partner to understand us. And that's okay. That's one of the skill sets. Set boundaries, forgiveness, self-care routine, empathy, communication, gentleness, emotional regulation. Those are some of the skill sets that we get the opportunity to learn how to be better at, to be able to strengthen and fortify ourselves and our marriage. Then we get the opportunity to change our mindset from a fixed mindset that's just wants to stay comfortable and wants to just stay where it's at and live life based on the amount of knowing that you have right now and the understanding you have right now. That's a fixed mindset. Just want to be comfortable. How can I be comfortable and just be okay with where I am now? A growth mindset is open. Change your mindset to a growth mindset. Be open, ready to challenge your old ideas and grow. and learn new things. That's part of the skill sets. These are all very interdependent. And have a vision, having a clear idea of where you want your marriage to go, what you want your marriage to look like. The more clear and the more creative you can come up with that idea, the more it's going to give you a picture of where you want to be and know why. Why do I want that? When you have a reason to it, a purpose to that vision, it's going to help you to get there. And then have a wise plan, a strategy. Have a good strategy of how to create the action plan of how to your part in creating this marriage that you want. What do you have? Who do you have to be to create that? What do you have to do to create that? Who do you have to become? What skill sets do you have to? These are interdependent. So what skill sets do you have to gain and to learn to be able to implement the strategy to be able to create that marriage that you want? Because if you're a great communicator, you can really learn to understand your partner and speak to them in a way that will help them to open up. And then energy. We got to have the energy, because if we don't have the energy, if we're working 60 hours a week and then coming home and trying to build our marriage, guess what? It's going to be tough. We're not going to have the energy we need to be able to put into our marriage. So raising our energy level and creating the energy to put that plan into action is important as well. So these are things that I have seen in myself and other people that work really well to cultivate these things within ourselves and to understand, to be able to save a marriage and to fortify and strengthen a marriage. And even if we're going through a separation, to reconcile a marriage. So I hope this was really, really